Hi guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of Total War Arena. So we've got a bit of a special one today. We are over on the PTS server testing out the new ability swapping up at tier 10. So for those of you who sort of haven't been following the development of the development newsletters and stuff, which have been talking a little bit about this, in essence, if I go to a normal unit, to say these tier 1 Romans, then the unit has some abilities. They have a jab and they have a javelin. And I am fixed with these. There's nothing I can do about them. I can actually now move them which way round they are, so which hotkey they respond to. But that is all that is available to me. But up at tier 10, they are now allowing it so you can basically switch in and out any of the available abilities, and there's quite a lot to choose from. And you can pick any of them from things fairly irrelevant, like Brace, I don't know why anyone would pick that, to ones verging on being overpowered, like Hamstring. I mean, imagine giving Hamstring to Romans seems kind of like madness to me. But obviously we're going to get things like that with the 80% movement speed modifier. You have Javelins. Marching Column, quite an interesting one for the movement speed bonus that is available, particularly with the fact it's a toggle ability. One I was considering playing around with a bit on Sulla, because obviously Sulla with the whip. And then if you're adding on another 15% movement speed, could be kind of interesting. Make these guys actually move pretty quickly. And you've got all the classic ones, parry, just strikes. Presence, Raise Eagles, and Raise Shields. Again, another really interesting ability, particularly for Sulla, as we're going to see later on. I think we'll have some games, and hopefully I can show you what the Raise Shields works like with Sulla. But I think it's going to take his missile block up to around 90. Not quite full, but it's going to make him very similar to a Testudo, which is one of the main abilities of Germanicus. It's really going to put Sulla in quite a stronger position, because one of his big weaknesses is his vulnerability to missile fire, so that may be ending with things like this. And all the other sort of different ones that are available. So yeah, it kind of gives you an idea there. Then where it gets a little bit crazy even more so is when we start to switch over to archers, things like Ambiorix. If we look at some of his abilities, you can really start to combine them in a bit of a maddening sort of way. So things like I could equip a rapid shot, so that's 35% reload. I'll probably keep a focus fire and a snipe, so I'm getting increased range, increased damage, a 35% reload combined with another 35% reload. I mean, it's like basically a barrage. You can basically get a free barrage, except that it lasts longer because it's 8 seconds on there and 20 seconds on there, combined with a plus 15% missile damage, 12% range. You can see where this is going. It starts to get pretty nuts pretty quickly. Or if you don't like that, you could obviously run it with things like Ambush's Flow, which just gives that 15%, but also gives a bit more damage. So you can rack the damage up on these guys pretty high. You can get easily well over into the 200s. Yeah, possibly getting a little bit dangerous. There are other abilities I'm not really seeing in game, to be honest, much like Concentrated Fire, 25% missile weapon penetration. Not really bothered about things like that. Missile Dispersion, well, maybe. Could be useful, but I suspect not really. Strain, Suppress, you can pin down enemy missile units. All these things are kind of interesting, but yeah, I'm not sure how useful some of these are going to be compared to when you can just put out such a volume of fire using some of these reload rate and damage increasing modifiers. So yeah, I've had a couple of games with these guys now, with some of the Sun Tzu guys, and yeah, they do shoot pretty quickly. It does get a little bit crazy, and I think it's a similar sort of story with the Greek archers as well. So yeah, possibly getting a little bit dangerous. Obviously, there's been some balance changes at the same time of this patch, which has sort of reduced the damage of some of the upper tier archers, particularly on like the Uruvula bow, but I don't think it's going to compensate for these sort of changes. And yeah, in essence, this is what ability swapping is. It's available on all tier 10 units, from things like elephants, where you can swap in things like Gore, which is technically the default unit anyway. Then you've got other things like increased missile block chance. This one I found to be particularly interesting, Traverse. So you can basically have it up a third of the time, because it's an 8-second duration with a 7-second cooldown, and that gives you a 25% movement speed bonus, which is quite nice. It actually puts the elephant speeds up around 6.5 meters a second, which is pretty insane for elephants. Or you can go with the classic Stampedes and Roar. You can set the unit up how you want it to be, and it's certainly going to add quite a lot of change. I think an awful lot of change actually up at tier 10, because no longer you're going to be just see a Sulla Roman and you can shoot him with your archers because he's got no missile block chance. No longer you're going to meet a Germanicus who's definitely going to be, you know, super strong in combat. You could have different selections of abilities. No longer can you just, yeah, like say traditionally, like you can bait out Vengeance quite easily because you charge into Roman infantry, they activate Vengeance, you run away, and the Vengeance goes off. Not in essence too complicated, although it can be a bit more than that. But now you charge in, he activates Vengeance, you go to run away, he smacks hamstring, and now you can't run away. So yeah, it's certainly going to change things up quite a lot. You're going to have to really focus in on researching what the enemy's abilities have got for their units. And obviously, if I hadn't pointed it out, which I don't know if I had, for example, I don't have to take the same abilities on each unit. So say for Sulla actually is a really good example for this sort of stuff because Whip does 17 morale negative modifier, which is one of the problems with Whip, that if you're in a really tough situation you can't use it because you're out. But you could, for example, just on one of your units say, oh, well, I'll sacrifice a Vicious Strikes because, you know, and I'll equip a Raised Eagle. That's going to be a 20 morale. And that is on an area of effect buff. So you don't need that on 3 units because it doesn't stack. There's no point. I might as well just have it on 1. So, you know, now I could activate Whip. You know, Raised Eagle lasts for 10 seconds, Whips for 12, so they're close enough to not really matter. And I could activate Whip and activate my Raised Eagle, and my Whip will stay on and I won't rout. So things like that, it's going to make it really confusing as sort of what you're going to be facing up against. It's going to be pretty chaos in the upper tiers. But anyway, I think I've waffled on enough. Let's just hop into a quick battle. I'll probably be taking Sulla, I think, in a training room with some of the Sun Tzu guys. And yeah, let's just see how we get on and try out a few of these abilities. So we are loading into our training battle with Sulla and our tier 10 Roman infantry. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a basic battle, just showing you just some of the abilities in action. Obviously, it's not a particularly balanced fight, just a handful of guys jumping into the training room. So, you know, not expecting to win. It's not really about the battle. It's just more about showing how you can combine the different abilities, and that's kind of what the point of this video is, obviously. So, as we looked at earlier, I've put on raised shields here with these Sulla guys. Mostly because I think that's probably the biggest weakness of Sulla is the lack of missile block. You see, and if I pop on my raised shields, that's going to put my missile block up to 89, which is, you know, not quite so far as to say is to be resistant to all missile fire, but it's going to be pretty close. But it almost makes you look like you're in Testudo anyway, doesn't it? You know, but if you really wanted the speed, obviously, you know, these guys at this sort of tier, what we're getting 4.3, 4.8 with whip on. Well, it looks like I might be getting a little bit of a bonus from the Sulla. But, you know, you have to consider that I could, for example, switch out one of my strikes for marching column. Like that, which is going to give me another 15% movement speed, so I could get significantly faster yet. And all these things are going to make a difference. Obviously, I am also running with hamstring, which it seems insane to give to tier 10 Romans. Particularly someone like Sulla, who's going to relatively easily be able to sort of keep up with people as well. And then hamstring is really going to finish that off as an ability. So it looks like we're coming up against some enemy pikemen. It's going to be quite hard to deal with. I think probably the main thing, oh, you can see the sort of missile block we are getting with our raised shields. Pretty high. The main thing I think I'm noticing is the fact that it really does turn up how things work at tier 10, because you never quite know what you're facing anymore. What the sort of traditional team sort of makeups or enemy makeups that when you meet someone that you expect to have, you never know what anyone's abilities are anymore. You know, these guys have now got a barbarian charge on them. It just makes it very confusing. I was going to move up, but they're moving down with... see, like that is used his barbarian charge there. That makes it really confusing. If you're not careful, you're going to be really caught out because of the way all these abilities are now so different. So getting the right combination is going to be really quite important in how these games play out. So they've gone into pipe phalanx. Our javelins, I should have thought, will be able to get in a good amount of damage on them, possibly now. They're not going to be fighting in the shade. Oh, they're going for the enemy javelins up and beyond, getting in a good amount of damage. And of course, many of the missile units can now take 2, you know, modifiers in the way they affect. So that kind of makes things a little bit different as well. Looks like those guys have been caught there. All right, try and get these guys round onto the flanks. We can go for our hamstring to make sure they can't perhaps turn so easily. We're going to get the rear flank on them now. Just keep you out just until they rout, and then we can go in.
Defend our base.
And there we go. Get all them. Let's try and kill them as quickly as we can. We can turn our raised shields off now. Obviously, we have our strikes and everything available. We have a double strike. You know, we have vicious strikes and hamstring, so we can get that extra melee attack. And, you know, we also have the... are we being capped out? We are. We can pin them down with our hamstring, and then we can get in with our vicious strikes to give us that extra weapon damage as well. So we can really make quite a lot there. Ooh, we've got some Hellenic cavalry coming down. They're going to take a full volley in the back from our archers. Obviously, even barbarian archers, you know, you can see they can take things like rapid shot. So that's minus 35% reload. And, oh, just been struck by cavalry. Now we're going to be able to use our Oh, he anviled me first. Okay, really well played there by Hazu. But I wanted to try and get my hamstring off. Oh, it looks like the anvil failed. But, you know, in that sort of situation, obviously they're just pinning us down so they can cap out. But in a normal sort of situation, you know, a cavalry would want to engage like that and then pull out. Yet, then suddenly they're going to find that they're going to be caught by hamstring, yet they're not facing falconmen. So things like that are potentially going to change the way things play out. And are pretty powerful. I really don't think hamstring should be included as one of these abilities. And I've heard quite a few other people express that as a sentiment as well. Because it's just such a powerful ability to be able to pin people down like that. That minus 80% movement speed modifier is pretty strong. So we'll interested to see how that plays out. So yeah, it kind of just gives you a little bit of an overview of the rest of the guys. Obviously we talked about some of the different abilities before. So yeah, it's quite a lot that's going to be coming with these unit abilities changing. Obviously it's certainly nice to be adding more content and more customizable content at this sort of tier. The way things are changing, a little bit different. Certainly makes things not quite so static, because you are going to have to really be paying attention to what you're coming up against, because there's going to be so many different combinations that work. I don't think there's going to be one fixed meta that you have to play if you want to win. I think there's going to be a few different options. I think this is going to make it kind of interesting up at tier 10. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this little sort of snippet of what we've got to come in the future. Obviously, this is not coming in the next patch. This is still a way off. They're still doing quite a bit of testing and stuff. It's just been tested for this weekend. So yeah, there's still a development to come in the future, but we're obviously getting pretty close to this coming out. So yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel for lots more Total War Arena content, and I shall see you all on the next video.